An ocean of spears. The mighty Persian Empire loomed, an entity so vast it seemed less a kingdom and more a force of nature. Unstoppable, unshakable, until a boy dared to defy it. This was the world in 334 BC. On one side, the Achaemenid Empire, a behemoth stretching from the shores of Greece to the Indus Valley, commanded by Darius III, the King of Kings. Their armies were a testament to their power, a seemingly endless tide of soldiers drawn from dozens of conquered lands, their numbers so great they could drink rivers dry. For centuries, Persia had been the center of the known world, a beacon of civilization, wealth, and military might. They were the giants of the age. On the other side, a young man from Macedon. Alexander was just 22 years old. His father, Philip II, had unified the fractious Greek city-states, but it was a fragile alliance built on strength and fear. Upon Philip's assassination, many believed Macedon's power would crumble. They underestimated the son. Alexander didn't just inherit an army, he inherited a dream, a pan-Hellenic crusade against Persia, a war of revenge for the invasions a century earlier. But dreams don't win battles. The reality was stark. He stood with an army barely half the size of the force Darius could muster. His treasury was nearly empty. Retreat was the logical choice. Surrender was the safe one. But logic never made legends. Alexander crossed the Hellespont, the narrow strait separating Europe from Asia, and in that moment, he wasn't just crossing a body of water, he was crossing a point of no return. He cast a spear into the Asian soil, claiming the continent as his own by right of conquest. A bold, almost arrogant gesture from a king who had yet to prove himself against the true might of Persia. His commanders, veterans who had fought under his father, urged caution. They saw the endless plains teeming with Persian scouts, the fortified cities, the sheer scale of the empire they were challenging. They advised him to secure his flank, to build a navy, to wait. Alexander listened, but he heard only the call of destiny. Their first major confrontation was at the Granicus River. The Persians, confident in their numbers and their superior cavalry, chose to defend the riverbank, a high, steep position. It was a death trap. Any force attacking would have to struggle up a muddy, slippery slope directly into the waiting spears of the Persian line. It was a textbook defensive advantage. The Persian strategy was simple and brutal. Kill Alexander. They believed that if the head of the snake was cut off, the body would wither and die. Their finest horsemen and Greek mercenaries were positioned to do just that. As the sun began to set, Alexander's general, Parmenion, strongly advised waiting until morning to attack. Attacking now seemed like suicide, but Alexander saw an opportunity where others saw only peril. He knew that hesitation would be seen as weakness. He turned to his men, his voice ringing with a conviction that defied the odds. "Gentlemen," he said to have declared, "a moment's hesitation will ruin all." He spurred his magnificent horse, Bucephalus, and plunged into the river, leading the charge himself. He was an easy target in his gleaming armor and plumed helmet, a beacon of defiance. The Persians charged like thunder to meet him. It was chaos. Men and horses screamed, slipping in the mud, the water turning red. Alexander was in the thick of it, fighting for his life. A Persian noble's axe blow shattered his helmet, stunning him. He was about to be struck down when his friend, Clytus the Black, intervened, severing the attacker's arm and saving the king's life. In that critical moment, the battle teetered on a knife's edge. Alexander, recovering, rallied his elite companion cavalry. They didn't just fight, they moved like a single organism, pivoting sharply with a discipline the Persians couldn't match. Alexander whispered to his men, "One strike, one moment, and the world will remember us." He led them in a wedge formation, a spearhead of courage and steel aimed directly at the heart of the Persian left flank. The line bent, then buckled, and then, against all odds, it shattered. Panic spread like a virus through the Persian ranks. The sight of their flank collapsing was too much. The mercenaries fought on bravely, but they were surrounded and cut down. The rest of the Persian army broke and fled. Alexander had won his first great victory on Asian soil. The boy had drawn first blood from the giant. But this was just the beginning. A year later at Issus, Alexander faced Darius himself. The Persian king had amassed an even larger army, confident he could crush the impudent Macedonian once and for all. The battlefield was a narrow coastal plain, which cleverly negated Persia's numerical advantage. The battle began, a colossal clash of civilizations. Once again, Alexander led from the front. He saw Darius, resplendent in his royal chariot, directing his forces from the center. Ignoring the chaos around him, Alexander gambled everything on a single, audacious charge, straight for the King of Kings. His companions followed, a torrent of armored fury. The Persian line guarding Darius fought desperately, but they couldn't stop the Macedonian onslaught. As Alexander and his cavalry drew closer, carving a path of destruction, Darius was gripped by a terror that overrode his duty as a king. He saw the fire in Alexander's eyes, the unstoppable momentum of his charge. He turned his chariot and fled the battlefield. The flight of the king was the death knell for his army's morale. The center collapsed, and the retreat became a rout. The boy had crushed the giant. The great king had run from a 23-year-old. Alexander captured Darius's camp, his treasury, and even his mother, wife, and daughters. In an act of chivalry that surprised many, he treated them with the utmost respect, a sign that he saw himself not just as a conqueror, but as a future king. The war was not yet over. The final decisive battle took place at Gaugamela. This time, Darius chose a vast, open plain, perfect for his scythed chariots and immense numbers. He had learned from his mistakes. He would use his superior force to envelop and annihilate the Macedonians. The night before the battle, the Persian camp was a cacophony of noise, their fires stretching for miles. The Macedonians, in contrast, rested in silence. Parmenion once again suggested a night attack to sow confusion. Alexander famously replied, "I will not steal my victory." He wanted to defeat the Persian Empire in broad daylight, in a straight fight, leaving no doubt as to who was the master of the field. As the battle raged, Alexander executed one of the most brilliant tactical maneuvers in military history. He feigned a retreat on his right flank, drawing the best of the Persian cavalry away from the center. This created a gap, a momentary weakness in Darius's line. It was the moment he had been waiting for. Just as at Issus, he led a decisive charge straight through the gap, aiming once again for Darius. And once again, history repeated itself. Darius fled. The Persian Empire, the superpower that had dominated the world for 200 years, was broken beyond repair. Alexander marched into Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the heart of Persia, not as a conqueror but as a liberator and the new king. But victory carried a shadow. As Alexander pushed further east to the very edges of the known world, a change began to occur. The spoils of war were immense: gold, spices, and luxuries beyond imagination. Alexander did not just conquer Persia, he began to become it. He started adopting Persian dress, the flowing robes of a king rather than the simple armor of a Macedonian general. He introduced Persian court customs like proskynesis, the act of bowing down before the king, which horrified his Greek and Macedonian followers, who saw it as an act of worship reserved for gods. He married Roxana, a Bactrian princess, and later encouraged his men to take Persian wives, aiming to fuse the two cultures into a new, single empire. His old guard, the men who had bled for him at Granicus and Issus, grew resentful. They saw their king, their friend, becoming a distant Oriental despot. This tension culminated in tragedy. At a banquet, fueled by wine and simmering anger, his friend Cletus the Black, the man who had saved his life at the Granicus, openly accused Alexander of disowning his father Philip and forgetting his Macedonian roots. In a blind rage, Alexander grabbed a spear and killed him. The immediate aftermath was one of crushing remorse. Alexander locked himself away for days, consumed by grief for what he had done. But the act was a symbol of the widening chasm between Alexander and his men. He had won the world, but he was starting to lose himself. He sat on the Persian throne surrounded by the opulence and symbols of the empire he had defeated, his figure blurred, caught between the conqueror he was and the king he had become, as if consumed by the very ghost of the empire he had vanquished. He had conquered Persia, but in the end, perhaps Persia had conquered him. Thank you so much for watching. We dive into stories like this every week, exploring the triumphs and tragedies that shaped our world. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to join our community of history lovers. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.